Okay, so we've got the definition of the gut microbiome, where it has over 100 trillion microorganisms in it. And expands, the physiology extends through the digestive it extends the digestive capabilities. It primes the immune system. It produces vitamins like vitamin D. It degrades pollutants and food additives. It resists colonization of pathogens, and it provides energy from the gut wall for undigested foods. So it has multiple functions. Okay. The next page. There we go. So when you look at the stomach, it has a bacteria in it called Helobacterium. If anybody is pylori, which is a stomach acid that helps protect and create and help in the first part of our digestive system. In our small intestines, we have bile and pancreatic secretions, and we have different types of lactobacilli and gram-positive cocci, and it really helps with our immune activities. And in the colon, we also have bacteria there that helps with our metabolic activity and produces short chain fatty acids. And we'll go into more detail of what those fatty acids do in the long run. But this is all the different components or locations of the different bacteria that are located in each area. And we'll go into a lot more detail as we move along here. So what influences the gut microbiome? Things like during delivery and feeding of babies at infancy. So it really will affect how much of the microbiome is affected if you're vaginally delivered or if it's a C-section. There's also going to be a great effect if you're breastfed or formula fed. So it's really important that that the beginning stages of life that we have a sense of how the gut microbiome affects us, and then also during the aging process. The reduction of diversity, more instances of antibiotics that breaks up the diversity and breaks down the gut microbiome. So it's really important that we continue to feed that gut microbiome in many ways with those pro, and post biotics. And that we'll go into a little bit more as we go through the slides here. So really things like that are the diet composition is very important, that influences the gut microbiome. So in the sense that the higher the fat Western diet that you have, it decreases some of the lactic acid bacteria. And if you are eating a high unsaturated fat intake, it increases the lactobacillus, and it's a beneficial bacteria in the gut. So really focusing in on those high saturated fats can be really important when we talk about the diet composition that can help influence the gut microbiome. Also your geography, where you're getting your food, where the food supply comes from, the diversity of fiber-rich foods really have an effect. And the lack of diversity, if you're eating the same thing all the time, can really affect it. If you're just eating off the land, just things that are locally provided in your area. Also medications, antibiotics and proton pump inhibitors can really affect the gut microbiome. Stress, your response to stress can also influence the response to infections, and your genetics. Though genetics only play a minor role, they estimate that only about 2 to 8% of the gut microbiome is inheritable. Certain villi are most likely inheritable. So what are some of the criteria for a healthy GI system? So when we look at what is healthy, we usually look at your effectiveness of digestion, absorption of food. Is it normal? Are you having regular bowel movements? You have the appropriate consistency? How about transit time? Are you going regularly? Really important to evaluate your healthiness of your gut. Is there any pain during transit? How about the absence of GI illness? So if if you've been diagnosed with cancer or celiac or GERD or carbohydrate intolerance or enzyme deficiencies, that would be a sign of an unhealthy gut. And there'll be ways that we will talk about as we go through of how to improve those. Number 3, normal or stable intestinal microbiota. So is there any bacterial overgrowth, infections? Are you more prone to infections? Normal composition and vitality of your microbiome. Effective immune system. Is there any type of you have normal mucus production, normal IgAs, immune cell level antibodies. Do you have any problems with your immune system? And how about status of well-being, your balance of serotonin production, or what they call your normal chi, or normal balance of life? So those would be the 5 criteria of a healthy gut system. So there is a question in the chat. I just want to stop and ask that question. If you have H. pylori already in your gut, then why can you get sick from it? And I think it's because of a lack of it. Okay, H. pylori, it's just how you're balancing your gut microbiome. And the H. pylori shows that there is a imbalance in your gut. It is something that is normally in our gut, and it's just a matter of where it's moved to and how much is in there in the sense of the balance. Okay, healthy conditions associated with the gut. So things like inflammatory bowel disease, like Crohn's disease or UC, or certain types of cancers like colon cancer and prostate cancer. Diabetes, both type 1 and type 2, even though they're from different sources, where type 1 is an autoimmune disease and type 2 is typically a insulin resistant disease. They are both considered associated with your gut health and can be improved with improved gut health. HIV, autism, sleep disturbances, not sleeping consistently, and the goal would be something like 7 hours, or there is something where you're unable to sleep. Rheumatoid diseases, chronic kidney diseases, chronic heart disease, like chronic heart failure or coronary artery disease. These are all considered and associated with gut health and can be improved. So let's talk a little bit more about probiotics, prebiotics, and postbiotics. And then we're going to talk a little bit about some of these that we can find in some food sources. Okay, so probiotics are live microorganisms that, when administered in adequate amounts, conferred means to be a healthy benefit for the host. So it's just the fact that there are those live microorganisms that can help administer adequate amounts. And that adequate amount is going to be different in every person. In 2007, inventor suggested that the microbiome, McClintock, suggested that ingesting more live microorganisms can help with health. And that was back in 1907. So lactic acid producing bacteria strains in yogurt enhanced longevity. So way back then, I believe he was from one of the Scandinavian countries, it's very interesting. Back in 1907, that yogurt enhanced longevity. And most widely used labs or lactobacillus strains with microbiotic effects like can prevent infections, they can lower cholesterol, and they can improve immune function. So all these different bacteria can really help with those issues. So really important that we focus in on if you're having any problems with infections or higher cholesterols or immune function, that these type of bacterium can really help. So what are the benefits of probiotics? So evidence exists that probiotics reduces inflammation, can reinforce that gut barrier, so there's no leaky gut. It can also help with allergies and respiratory infections, and also IBS and UC. And it can help us synthesize our vitamins, so better digestion of our and usage of our vitamins. It can also help with specific associated improved health in pathogen growth, production of different types of different types of digestive enzymes, and it also represents it can repress different types of viruses. So increasing portions of the bacteria and the lactobacilli represents a healthier microbial composition. So what is the evidence? Okay. Is there any evidence for the use of for healthy individuals? So supplementing. So supplementing with probiotics has not shown to be very evidence-based, especially when we're looking at C. diff and IBS and atopic dermatitis. Most of the probiotics we see do not survive, in the GI system, because there's been mixed results. Bacteria in stool, not in intestines, and a lot of times there's a lot of talk that regulation is very limited on a lot of these supplements. So we always recommend food is always the best way to supplement with your probiotics because of the lack of regulation, that there's no true evidence out there. And everybody's probiotic needs are going to be a little bit different. So one size doesn't fit all. So, and there's mixed reviews, how do these probiotics survive in your GI system? Because most of the bacteria is in your stool. Sometimes they say by the time it gets to your colon, it's less effective. So the jury is still out on supplementation of probiotics. What we really do try to enforce is finding it in food. So I'd like everybody to take about 5 minutes. Take about a minute or so and write down what type of probiotics or what 5 things have you done or consumed for improved gut health. And if you want to post it in the chat, that would be great. If you want to share, but I just wanted to have everybody kind of look at their gut health and just tell me, what ways have you improved your gut health in foods you've eaten? Are you taking a supplement? Um, what things have you done? Okay, I see somebody wrote something down. Let's just see here. Okay, so new message from Ty. Okay, yogurt and pomegranate juice, great. Probiotic pills. Some of you, Micah, you're taking some probiotic pills, and Shelly's having some yogurt and some pomegranate. So great. Those are great ways to increase your gut health. So great. Thank you so much for sharing. As they say, there's no one thing that's going to help every. And then Janet says she takes some kefir or kefir, which is a great probiotic drink. I have yet to try it. I think I tried it and tasted it, but haven't used it on a regular basis. So always interested in finding out how folks are eating it. It's good, Micah says. And then even things like yogurts and shakes. I know I do a lot of Greek yogurts, and I think those can be very helpful. You just want to make sure that when you read the labels that it has active ingredients. I'm looking right now at my FIA, and it has some active ingredients like Actophilia, it's got L. Actophilia. It's got a lot of active cultures. So that when you're reading your labels, just make sure that there's live active cultures in it, and it can really be helpful to you. So thank you, everybody, for sharing. That's great. All right, so just make this a little bit bigger here. So sources of probiotics. So things like fermented vegetables and fruits like sauerkraut, kimchi, pickles, pickled beets, pickled carrots. That fermentedness can really help increase those probiotics. Kefir. And also vegetarian kefir, yogurts, sour creams, buttermilk. Even things, proteins like tempeh, natto, which is, I think it's a Japanese a protein. Beverages like kombucha, kefir water, beets, fermented condiments. All really good that have those live active cultures. And try not to cook them, and these must be refrigerated to keep them active. So once they've kind of hit your system, they kind of break down. So that's why it's really most important to get them cold to begin with. Okay. And then foods that have probiotics, um, uh, foods for probiotics, or excuse me, prebiotics. I'm sorry. What are prebiotics? So these are this feeds the probiotics. And they're basically substrates that are selected by the host or the microorganism, and creates a health benefit. So fermenting results in a lot of changes in the composition or activity of the microbiome. So you're feeding that microbiome. So fermented carbohydrates like human milk, from the for breast milk, dietary fibers, phenolic and photochemicals, conjugate linoleic acids, the polyunsaturated fatty acids, and the oleosaccharides. So we're going to go into more detail of exactly what these fermented carbohydrates are in food items as we go further. Okay, so what are some of the benefits of the prebiotics? So you're going to increase your different types of bacterias, and these prebiotics can increase stool bulk. So if you're having problems with loose stools, the fermentation leads to increased bacteria mass and binds you up by absorbing the water and improves transit time. It also reduces symptoms of GI discomfort. It's an inulin type fructan, most studied, and it reduces your appetite, improves glucose tolerance anywhere from 5 to 8 grams daily. Things like artichokes, asparagus, chicory, onions, functional foods like protein bars or protein powders. Those are the ones that are most studied, and potential effects on colon cancer risks. So those are the benefits. And more studies are coming out. I just always find that every 5 years every year we come out with some new studies. So keep an eye out, and I have all my references at the end. But most of my information here is from the late 1919 the 2019, 20, 21, 22. But new studies are coming out all the time. Okay, things like vegetables, your asparagus, your dandelion greens, things like leeks and onions and chicory, humica, fruits and vegetables, the fruits like avocado, apples, bananas, pears, dairy, I think we've talked about, is both a pre and a probiotic. Your kefir, your yogurts, some milks and some cheeses, your starches like beans and legumes, and other things like honey and chicory root. And then there's symbiotics, which are kind of at the end here of your mixture of your probiotics and your prebiotics, the benefits affected by the improvement of the survival and the colonization of live bacteria, microorganisms in the GI gut. So it's the healthy benefits, the increase in the lactobacilli and the bifidobacteria. It improves your liver function, improves your ability, your immune system. It prevents bacteria transferring the bacteria from one organ to another. It's proposed as a therapeutic agent. It helps with constipation, lowering high fasting blood glucose levels. It reduces your risk of post-op sepsis, which is a bacteria, infection throughout your body. And so what is a postbiotic? So it's a functional proactive component produced during fermentation, which may be used to promote health, and it creates those short chain fatty acids. It also improves your functional proteins and your micro cell fractions. It's proposed health effects of other biotics relating to the postbiotic production. So it inhibits growth of pathogens by lowering your pH, because pathogens only live in higher pHs. It provides energy. It enhances your intestinal bacteria function. And it also has a lot of anti-inflammatory effects, and also helps with that transient time or peristalsis. So really, really great to see that these short chain fatty acids can help. So let's talk about how we can get some of these pre post biotics in some of our food sources. Okay, so ideas for breakfast might include smoothies with kefir or kefir water with banana and berries. Some of you were saying that you're using kefir and in your shakes, so go for it. Yogurts, your Greek yogurt or your vegan yogurts with berries and nuts, or an omelet using kimchi or sauerkraut or onions, and asparagus, all really good sources of probiotics and prebiotics. How about for lunch and dinner? Let's just see what we have here. We've got some stir fry with some bok choy, some eggplant, some quinoa, and some kimchi. I'm very curious to find out if anybody is using kimchi. I have tasted it, but I have not used it in any of my recipes. So if anybody's got any ideas, I'd love to hear from you in the chat on how you're using kimchi. It's got like a cabbagey taste to it, and it's got a little pickled taste, but I haven't used it in any of my recipes. A probiotic type of a taco could include tempeh, which is a soy protein, avocado on some tortillas, and some fermented sauerkraut. I love sauerkraut. And then how about some salad or some power bowls? That might include some ranch dressing with kefir or miso, with some whole grains and greens and vegetables. I think somebody put in the chat here how they're using kimchi's too spicy for me too. Yeah, I have not found a great recipe. So if anybody's got any ideas, I would love to hear it because it's so very good for us. And then say some dietary components of gut health, I think is really important for us to point out too, of where we can find some things in our dietary. So things that we want to be careful of. So things like a high fat diet, 40% of our calories induced unfavorable changes. So we really want to decrease those short chain, those decrease. So if we have a really high fat diet, a lot of those diets like keto tends to be in that higher fat area, can have some unfavorable changes in our gut microbiome by decreasing the bacteria that produces those short chain fatty acids. It also increases the fecal concentration of the long chain saturated fats, so can be somewhat unhealthy too. So just be really careful with the amount of fats that you're having in your diet. And lower fat diets increase those favorable changes, like increases those anti-inflammatory bacteria. It enhances the protein degrading by the gut microbiome, so it's easier to break down your proteins. Unsaturated fats also increase those lactobacillus bacteria. And the keto diet is associated with those reducing massids and the diversity. So diversity is very important when we talk about gut microbiome. So really trying to have a diverse amount of carbohydrates and proteins in your diet. And associated with a lot of the unsaturated fats would help with improving that gut microbiome. So really finding out, getting many of your lower fat diets, like a vegetarian diet with high fiber, can really help increase that bacterial diversity. Really important. And when I talk about carbs and fibers, we really talk about promoting the beneficial growth of bacteria through whole grains. And really important that we do look for whole grains, and looking at that first ingredient on your um, on your on your ingredient list, that the first ingredient says whole, WHOLE. So Michael was saying that vegetarian diet's not necessarily low fat. That's very, very true. I think it's really important that we look at that how much fat is part of our diet. How much how many dressings are you putting on? How much in your different types of protein? Are they high fat proteins? Are you eating chicken with the skin? Are you eating red meat that has more than 90%, that are less than 90% lean? So really trying to find those leaner cuts of proteins, and really seeking out that, and really looking, when we're looking at carbohydrates, diets that are high in carbohydrates can increase that level of those short chain fatty acids that can help with that diversity. It can help with creating those diets that are more plant-based proteins, are associated with microbiome of children from Europe versus rural African village show profound differences. So really trying to find that you increase that fiber in your carbohydrates, and looking for more of those plant-based proteins can be really beneficial in improving the bacterium in your diet or in your gut microbiome. And low carb intake associates with lower fecal short chain fatty acids, so it decreases the amount of bacterial numbers and diversity. So really making sure that your carbohydrates include high fiber and are associated with a balanced intake. And make sure that there's evidence that the short chain fatty acids that are found in whole grains are fermented, and may also include increase your satiety, so your fullness. So if weight loss is important to you, that those short chain fatty acids that you're going to find in your whole grains, and the fermentation can also create that feeling of fullness. So another benefit for having those whole grains. And then proteins, a lot of the animal-based proteins increase that bile tolerance microorganisms, and it lowers the carb fermentation. So really looking at the E. coli and the bacteria that do not survive in vegan and vegetarian diets, the higher in carbs, lower in pH. So really important that we really balance the animal protein versus the plant proteins. So we really want to make sure that we are balancing both animal and plant-based proteins, because they all have their benefits. I know that a lot of animal proteins have higher iron, so if you're low in iron, it's a benefit to have an animal protein. But don't make all your proteins animal-based. Having the plant-based protein can give you a increase in the diversity of your gut microbiome. And really try to stay away from those processed meats, things like your cured, your salted, your smoked, and then keeping your red meat to a minimum, and just having a good variety of red meat, chicken, fishes, your plant-based proteins like tofu and tempeh. Really important to have that variety, because that diversity is what's going to help keep that gut microbiome healthy and working well to prevent some of these chronic diseases. And other dietary factors, things like polyphenols, can represent the growth of bacteria, like your C. diff, including C. diff, less effects on the lactobacillus. Like artificial flavors or sweeteners induce glucose tolerance by altering the gut microbiome. So really try to keep those artificial sweeteners at bay, because they can really decrease that diversity in your gut microbiome. New research like stevia results in similar changes when given with a high-fat diet. So really be very limiting in those artificial sweeteners because they do have an effect on the diversity of our gut microbiome. So new research is coming out all the time. So really bottom line, eating a diverse diet, supports a diverse microbiome, and try to avoid fads and doing a diet that's just, that's short term. Really look for some variety, including both those pro and prebiotics daily. The focus is really looking at that fiber. And, most people get about 5 to 10 grams of fiber a day. The focus on fiber is to really try to increase that up to 25 to 38 grams per day. Really looking at your plant-based foods and that are associated with those microbial enrichment that protects and gives you satiety, protects the elements in your body. Really try to avoid those high fat, high animal protein diets associated with more pathogens, less beneficial bacteria, and try to avoid artificial sweeteners because it really does alter our gut microbiome. So these here are some of my references. So I'm happy to share my slides if you would like. I'm happy. You can either email me, give me a call, or just leave in the chat if you'd like me to send you the slides or the recording. Please let me know if this has been beneficial or if there's any questions. Stop the. Anybody have any questions? And I wish I could.
I got a question. I put it in the chat. What about allulose? That's one of the newest non-nutritive sweeteners they have, and it's supposed to have none of the side effects of any of the other ones do.
So I haven't read anything on allulose. Spell that for me.
Allulose or
So
LSE.
yep, ALLUS.
No, oh wait, I put it in the chat. Let me spell it from what I wrote. ALLULOSE.
Okay. I'm not familiar with it. Is it in something that you're eating?
No, I just heard that it's a good sweetener to buy.
Hmm.
I thought I've seen it in the stores more and more, but I haven't bought it.
Yeah, you know what, Mike, I'll get back to you on it. I'm not familiar with it, so I
Mhm.
don't want to talk out of school here.
Okay.
But let me do some research on it. It wasn't anything that I have seen. But you're seeing what kind of foods have you seen it in?
Not in any kind of foods, but there's this vegan doctor called Dr. Michael Greger, and he recommends mixing allulose with one of those zinger teas that has a lot of what do you call it? Hibiscus in it and making it in a cold jug of drink for the summer. He says very good for you. But I don't know if it is or not.
Yeah, I'll do some reach on it and I'll get back to you and let you know a bit, but I'm not familiar with it. But I always say that, any type of sweetener that is manufactured is probably not as good as having a little bit of honey, things that are natural that we know what the body will do. But let me just do some research on it, because more and more things are coming out, and I'm always open to seeing what's out there. So just we'll try to get we'll get some more information on that. Um, so Debbie was saying, I was mortified to find out that sucralose and saccharin is in my Listerine mouthwash. So yeah, anything that's sweetened, those things are there. And the good thing is, hopefully, you're not drinking it. That it's not in your system for too long. That's the good thing. But thank you for sharing. It is amazing when you're looking at labels how much stuff is, that these artificial flavors and sweeteners are in there. So it is amazing. So it's so important that we all are looking at those really important labels to read. And whenever a label changes, make sure you're reading it, because a lot of times they've changed the formula in it. And toothpaste too, yes, definitely. It's also in toothpaste too. So really trying to find out, what's in things. Anything that's sweet, and just guarantee that there's some type of sweetener in there. And hopefully you'll find more the natural ones that are in there, like honeys and things like that. So, but it is scary. But I thank you all for being part of this program here tonight. Is there any final questions that anybody would like to, or comments? I'm just really happy that you spent the hour with me tonight. All right. Well, thank you so much, and all have a great night. Okay. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye bye now.